Hi, I'm Caleb Giddings from Gun Nuts Media, and pardon my slightly messy kitchen as I just got back from annual tour, but on today's video we're going to be examining and detail stripping the Gen 5 Glock 17, and we're going to be doing it live because forget competition. You're not going to see a lot of my face in this video because we're focusing on the gun. So, now to field strip. Now what we're going to do through this video is compare some of the obvious components to Gen 4 guns, namely the Gen 4 Glock 34. I don't actually have a Gen 4 Gen 4 17 to compare this to, but that's okay. So the first component that we're going to compare is the recoil spring assembly. In this hand, the recoil spring assembly from the Gen 5 17, and in this hand, the recoil spring assembly from the Gen 4 34. You'll notice right off the bat, the 17's RSA is a little bit longer. Interesting. Now that means that these recoil spring assemblies won't interchange between guns, which kind of sucks for some people, but whatever. So we'll toss that one aside. Now, we're going to get to the interesting stuff, or at least the stuff that I think is interesting, and that's going to be the internal bits on the pistol itself. So obviously, everyone here knows that the new Gen 5s only have one pin, this one right here. Well, technically 2 pins, whereas the Gen 4 models have one pin here and another pin under it, and of course they have this pin back here that retains the trigger housing mechanism, so I'm gonna pop this sucker out. Oh man, I got it on the first try. All right, so that pin, there's your main pin that does almost everything. That's out now. Now what's interesting with this, to do the detail strip, the next step that I have to do is I have to take the locking block out. Come on. Once the locking block has been removed, I can then remove the new slide stop, and we can discuss this because this is actually interesting. All right, so here's the new slide stop assembly. And if you guys want to take a look at that, if I can get the camera to focus on it. No. All right, whatever. So here's what's interesting about it. Do you see that little tiny spring at the front? That little spring has what's replaced the old crappy paperclip spring that you had on all of the previous generations of Glocks. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So on all previous generation Glocks, the slide stop spring is this crappy little paperclip thing. It sucks. It breaks all the time. It walks. It'll fail. And when it fails, what happens? I'm just now realizing how messy my stove is. You didn't see that? That didn't happen. I love doing live videos. I really do. So, this crappy little spring breaks all the time. I'm holding it by the spring. It breaks all the time. And when it breaks, the gun starts going to slide lock prematurely. My stove is so messy. There we go, that's better. All right, so the gun will go to slide lock prematurely and it will stop working. And every time you fire around, the slide will lock to the rear, and that's all caused by this tiny little spring breaking. And when I say break, I don't mean it like literally shears in half or anything. I mean it loses spring tension and then it stops working. In the new generation of Glocks, the spring looks like this. And you know what it doesn't do? Break all the friggin' time. Well, at least the hope is that it doesn't break all the friggin' time. So that's the new design on the slide stop, and I think it's tight. I really think it's tight as hell. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pop the trigger assembly. We're gonna look at some of the differences in this. All right, and I'm gonna pop the one out of the Gen 4 while we chit-chat as well. So one of the other problems I've always had with Gen 4s, and especially the 34s, is this pin right here on all of my 34s has always walked after a little bit of shooting. I don't know what happens, but it'll start to walk out of the gun, and when it walks out of the gun, that slide stop spring then walks into a bad place, and the gun starts locking open prematurely, and bad things happen, and you lose matches and cry so very much. Okay, so here we have the Gen 4 trigger assembly, all right? And the big thing that everybody knows is when you want to detail strip one of these, there's this spring section right here in the back of the gun. That doesn't exist anymore. Here is the Gen 5 assembly. The spring is now here in the front of the trigger housing assembly. And what that does is, in theory anyway, it's going to make the spring have a longer life. These trigger return springs are probably the part I break with the most frequency in my Gen 3 and 4 Glocks, and it's just from shooting the gun and running the gun and wearing the gun out. So I'm hoping that the new spring setup in the Gen 5 will actually make a real difference in how the gun functions. Obviously, there are some differences in the slide assemblies as well, which we're going to take a look at now. Oh, if anybody wants to know what I'm using to take this gun apart, this is the Lone Wolf Glock tool. Basically, it's a Spyderco Delica with a 3/8 punch on the bottom of it, and it is the most useful thing I own, especially when I'm doing Glock work. So, Glock striker plate. It's different now. Striker's out. I haven't actually taken one of these apart yet, so you guys are getting to watch me do this for the very first time. Here's the other thing that's cool. The firing pin block is now much more robust and beveled, so that's neat. All right, so we're going to compare these to the other ones. For my guys out there who utilize the Gadget, the striker control device, it is not currently directly compatible with the Gen 5. You either have to modify your gun's frame, or you have to wait until they come out with a new one. All right, so here in this hand is the Gen 5 striker assembly, and here is the Gen 4 striker assembly. You'll notice the big difference is the firing pin tip on the Gen 5 is rounded, and it's not rounded on the Gen 4. On the Gen 4, it's that flat blade that we're used to on Glocks, but the Gen 5 is now a rounded firing pin tip like you'd see on other guns. All right, I'm going to put all these back together, and that's pretty much it. That's the Gen 5 Glock detail stripped. The big differences that you can see, obviously, are the important ones are the construction, again, of your firing pin being rounded means you're less likely to get primer wipe. The geometry of the firing pin of the trigger return spring is probably better, and of course, wherever I put it, the best part, really the best part, is the new slide stop. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. Until next time, remember, run your gun, not your mouth. Thanks for watching, everyone.